stay tuned because for the next 60 minutes, Motorsports Unlimited is on the air. Hi, I'm Jerry Bryant, and these are the lovely ladies of motorsports. And all this hour, we're going to have 60 minutes of action-packed excitement.
Excuse me.
All kinds of excitement.
Hi, everybody. I'm Janine Lauschat, and this is the 1038th edition of Motorsports Unlimited. Today, we're talking about trains. Not trains as in railroads, but trains as in valve trains. To do it, we're turning back the calendar 17 years when we discussed this in depth. Let's listen to Paul Schultz explain.
It's September, and that means school is back in session. So have your paper and pencil handy, as today we're going to help you understand modern four-cycle engine valve train technology. And as always, we're going to do it in our own special way. That means our lovely ladies of motorsport are going to explain. Right, girls?
That's right, Paul. Hi, I'm Laura Stannis.
I'm Allison DeMore. We're here today to help you learn about the value of advanced engine technology.
And how to spot how the auto and motorcycle manufacturers identify technical features.
Let's join Bill Wildt, who is now infatuated with big openings, at Motorsports Unlimited South in Blue Island, and get started on our quest to understand.
Bill always says he loves going to salvage yards. Now I see why.
I'm sorry, I could not resist it. I liked the Elvis opening show so much that we had to do it once more because I got these really cool sunglasses, right, Chris?
Yeah, but it really did look neat, the idea you had there, picking up all the girls like that. It really was a great idea.
Okay, but where are we today? This is obviously not the Elvis show at the Oakbrook Terrace.
No, we're back at ABC Auto Parts.
Right, this is our old friends at ABC Auto Parts, and what do you suppose we're doing here, Allison?
We are going to come here and learn how an engine works.
No! Kimmy, tell
We do this 1 hour TV show.
I'm not sure what we're going to learn today.
Laura, tell him.
I don't know. I suppose that we're going to show what sort of good stuff you can get at a junkyard.
Honestly, I explained it to him all the way down here. No, remember I tested you guys during the past couple of weeks. I've been testing you on cars, on the badges that we see on cars and all that, and asking you if it means anything, if these things... Say again?
Nomenclature.
Okay, college grad. Now, we've been asking if they mean anything to you, and you guys are not alone, by the way. Most guys also don't know what that means. For example, OHC. Laura, what does OHC mean to you if you see that on a car?
I really don't know.
Okay, how about SOHC?
I don't know.
Okay, how about DOHC?
DeMore offers.
Wrong. Okay.
Well, I know what that
No, well, I know, but that's why I didn't ask you, Chris, because I didn't want to spoil the surprise. Anyhow, so I said, now where can we get a demonstration of these things? And our old friends at ABC Auto Parts, these guys are always willing to, I mean, you just wouldn't believe the trouble they went through again. Remember, Chris, last year when they actually took the front wheel drive car apart so we could demonstrate to our audience? Remember?
They had to go through an awful lot of work.
Right, and so we are here today to explain what all those things mean, because remember now, the purchase of an automobile is probably, if it's not the largest purchase you'll ever make in your life, it'll probably be your second largest purchase after a home. This is very important, and a knowledgeable consumer is really our best friend. So we want to explain what some of these things mean and demonstrate the parts and pieces that go into it, because it's very, very important. Now, what I want to do is I want to start with this car right over here, and we're going to ask you what this means. Chris?
I don't know what it means.
Allison?
I have an idea, but I won't say it because it's dirty.
No, it's definitely not dirty. Kimmy, go ahead and tell her what it means.
I'm not sure.
Laura?
I don't know.
Okay, girls, come on over here so we can get a little better camera shot of you guys. Right here, line up in a line. Okay, what we have just looked at now is a badge, a typical identification badge on a car that the factory went through an awful lot of work and effort to make sure that you knew that this was OHC fuel injection. Now, Christine, you must know what fuel injection means.
Yes, it's a replacement for a carburetor.
Well, replacement, it's an entirely different way of inducting fuel into the airstream, and I don't want to get into all that because that's not my point. I'm most interested today in the OHC. That is fairly common. Now, wait a minute.
Can I ask a question before you go on? How much longer do we have to look at you in those glasses?
Oh, come on, these glasses. Kimmy, didn't you say these glasses were very cool?
Oh, you look so cool, Bill.
Cool, man, cool.
Okay, I'll take them off. Okay.
Take you serious.
It's hard to take me serious with the glasses. Okay, in any event, OHC means something, and it's important. And the manufacturers go through a lot of effort to redesign these engines and redesign these parts so that the public gets a superior product. But it's really of no value if nobody knows what it means.
What? I was telling you, when you look at a car, I'll look at that, but I add it like for the decor, like if it's a neat color or the neat numbers.
You look at it for decorative value as far as how the letters are.
Or how, the color, if they're in gold, you notice it that way. But truthfully, how many of the public, most of them know that? I mean, I would not have.
Let's talk about it, because that's exactly why I'm doing this program today. And girls, I think we better spread out a little, because I don't think the camera's getting you guys at all. In a line now, okay? Now, here's the problem. One cannot criticize the automakers for not making technically excellent products if, when they introduce technically excellent products into the marketplace, the public has no interest in them and doesn't reward them with purchases. For example, suppose manufacturer A brought out a car that had a flathead engine, nothing technically sophisticated. I won't go into what all that means, but a very primitive car technically. Sold it for, say, $5,000 a piece, whatever. Another manufacturer, for the same price, brought out a car with double overhead cams and electronic fuel injection and a very sophisticated piece. $5,000. And they both sold an equal amount of them. Well, that doesn't reward the technical excellence of manufacturer B that went through all the effort to make a technically advanced product if it wasn't rewarded in the marketplace. And that's what's wrong. What I'm trying to do is help people understand what these things are.
But basically, by making it technically advanced, don't they also in their marketing make them look spiffy, or the colors or the brightness, to sell to the people who don't know what that means?
Right, you're right and wrong. Here's the problem with it. Yes, you're right. The marketing department will take this stuff and run with it. Unfortunately, they also take stuff that doesn't mean anything and run with it, and it confuses the public. For example, the OHC, that's important. Now, why is it? If it were OHV, would that mean anything to you?
About the same as OHC, actually.
Okay, and yet OHC would be technically more sophisticated than OHV, but if you didn't know that, whether it was, maybe the OHV was a spiffier design and you selected that one because it had a spiffier badge than the OHC, even though the OHC, they spent a lot of time. You see what I'm getting at?
Yes, I do, but now when you go for a car, like I'll ask, when I just went for my new car, I was asking questions like, all right, tell me about the car. They never mentioned that. They're telling me, which was, I felt a little insulted. Oh, the window goes, if you press the button, it go all down by itself. You don't have to hold the button down. And the radio has a cassette deck in it. And I almost found it kind of insulting.
Well, don't be insulted because they don't know either. Generally, the salesman doesn't know.
I was going to say they probably have no idea what it means either.
Okay, we are going to specifically start with one thing in particular today, and that is this business of OHV, OHC, DOHC, SOHC, and what this means as far as components are concerned. And I'm going to hope that we don't get stung by these bees flying around.
I know, they're aggravating.
Okay, so let's get into it. In fact, I'll tell you what, I'd like to look at a couple of more badges first, and then we will get into the specific business of this OHC and everything, so you guys understand that this really does mean something, and it's important. So if we could, all four of you guys together.
Don't go away, folks. We'll be right back.
Huh. He never said what OHC means.
I must admit, I've never paid much attention to the technical information badges on cars. Perhaps there is something to be learned. Let's watch.
Okay, Kimmy, what does it say?
It says 2.8 multi-port FI.
What does that mean?
I don't know.
You really don't have any idea?
I have no idea.
Okay, yet those things are very important. First of all, the 2.8, that's a little bit Madison Avenue-y, and what do I mean by that? That means like advertising agency stuff. Okay. 2.8 means 2.8 liters. There's about 61 cubic inches in a liter, so if you took two 61 cubic inch and 61 cubic inch. Add that together, and then add 0.8 of another liter. That'll give you in cubic inches. It's just another way of saying engine size, like a 427 is 427 cubic inches. This is 2.8 liters, but it's so many cubic inches. The word FI.
I think that's fuel injection.
That's exactly correct. That's fuel injection. But the word multi-port fuel injection, what does that mean? That's what the multi-port, it's significant. What does it mean?
Gee, I'm not sure.
Okay. Fuel injectors that are not sophisticated generally will have a common fuel injection nozzle spraying into like a plenum chamber, and all of the cylinders drawing from that one chamber. Whereas the more sophisticated ones, they'll have multi-port fuel injection, whereas each port for each cylinder has a fuel injector nozzle. It's a little bit more sophisticated than the other one, and yet you probably wouldn't have paid any more for one with multi-port fuel injection for one than with what they call throttle body fuel injection, right?
Right.
Okay, but if you know, then it becomes of value. Okay, now let's take a look at something else and tell the camera.
Don't go away, folks. We'll be right back.
Okay, that explains 2.8 multi-port FI. But how about the word turbo, which seems to be everywhere?
All right, Laura, it's your turn. What does it say?
Okay. What does it say where?
Over here. See, you didn't know that the camera just saw this. Right there. What does it say?
Turbo electronic fuel injection.
Okay, step back now. What does it mean?
Well, it would be different than normal fuel injection, but that's about all I know.
So you think the word turbo would be part of the fuel injection?
Yeah.
No, it's not. First of all, turbo is the most overused word in the English language. I don't want to go into it all now. We've talked about it on other programs, and what they are essentially talking about is that this engine is turbocharged. And turbocharged means an engine has a compressor on the intake side. We've been through it before. I don't want to get into that because they turbo everything now. They have turbo car washes, turbo this, turbo shoes, turbo records. It's the most overused words.
So it really means nothing then?
Well, no, it's very important, but it means that the car is supercharged. And more importantly than that, the better word is what the Germans call it, is the car has a compressor on it, because that's what a supercharger is. It's a compressor. This happens to be an exhaust-driven compressor. The other word, electronic fuel injection, what does that mean?
Electronic fuel injection. Would it mean that the car had sort of a computer inside of it that controls the fuel injection?
Well, essentially what it means is, yes, it does. Electronic fuel injection is controlled by a computer and all that. It's true. But essentially what it is telling you there is that it has a fuel injection rather than a carburetor, and it's electronic fuel injection rather than a mechanical fuel injection. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Okay. Kimmy, do you have a question on that?
I was just wondering on what was the difference between the electronic fuel injection compared to the regular fuel injection.
The electronic is the more advanced.
Yeah, that's correct. The problem with going with mechanical fuel injection is mechanical fuel injection has been used for years and years and years in race cars. But race cars they operate under very limited conditions. What they really need is full throttle, at the very least 3/4 throttle. So they're operating 3/4 to full throttle all the time. That's all that the computer has. That's all the injection has to do is spray fuel in at that rate. Whereas when you get into automobiles, you're going to be caught in hot traffic, idling. The air conditioner kicks on. You're going to be in freezing cold temperatures. It's very different. And electronic fuel injection is much more sophisticated in that the computer senses a variety of conditions other than just engine need and meters fuel accordingly. Really, electronic fuel injection is what has made fuel injection applicable to passenger car use. Fair enough? We've got to go on to the next one. Everybody together?
Don't go away, folks. We'll be right back.
What about OHC, Bill?
This stuff can be complicated, but Bill found one that we all knew. How about you?
Christine, apparently this one is an easy one. What does this mean?
That's four-wheel drive.
And what does that mean?
That means that all four wheels are driving the car, as opposed to just two, in the front or the back.
Okay, and apparently everybody knew this one, so this isn't a big surprise. I guess the public is pretty well knowledgeable then that what four-wheel drive means, right?
Right.
Okay, let me change it just slightly. Instead of 4WD, how about if it was 4WS?
Four-wheel steering.
Oh, okay. Very good. I can't fool these guys at all. Christine, tell the camera.
Don't go away, folks. We'll be right back.
That one was too easy, so Bill took us to the motorcycle section to embarrass me.
All right, Allison, it's your turn. Let me step past you here. I sure don't want to block the girls' camera shots. What does that mean? First of all, what does it say?
DOHC 750.
What does that mean?
All right, I've been sitting here contemplating this for a while, and it might sound stupid. Double overhead cam?
That's perfect. Now, how did you deduce that?
Well, overhead cam I got just from seeing the other ones we were doing early. The D, what else could it mean? Double or dumb, and it certainly isn't dumb, so double.
What does the 750 mean?
Horsepower?
No, the 750 is 750 cc's. That's cubic centimeters, and that would be, by the way, if you were going to put it in liter form, that would be 3/4 of a liter.
Wow.
Okay, in other words, 750, 1,000 cc's. If this were 1,000, that would be a 1 liter engine. Okay, this is a 750 cc's. That's 3/4 liter engine.
Okay, all I know about motorcycles is the higher the number is, the bigger the bike is.
Well, that would be accurate unless we changed it to cubic inches, and I won't get into all that. But anyhow, now the more important question. You've identified properly, that means double overhead cam. What does that mean?
Oh, good. He makes me look stupid all the time. Well, there's 2 overhead cams and makes it double.
Allison was right, but the question is, what does it mean? Bill says to understand why an engine would need overhead cams, you must first understand what engine designers are trying to accomplish.
If DOHC means double overhead cams, then OHC must mean 1 overhead cam, right?
Girls, it's like school, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay, it's going to be like school. Now, I needed a way to help you guys understand power in an engine. Allison, if you want to understand overhead cams and double overhead cams and things like that and why one is better than the other, you have to understand the ultimate objective. First of all, it is not difficult to build an engine that has to make 500 horsepower, 1,000 horsepower, or 2,000 horsepower. We regularly do that with locomotives and big tractor trailer trucks and things like that. The problem is making a motor that's small and light, and remember, the weight of the engine is part of the weight of the vehicle, and you have to drag that all over the country too. So if you have an engine that has the weight of a cement mixer, but it makes 1,000 horsepower, it's not going to be a very fast car, very fuel efficient or all that. So the idea is, how do we do it with a smaller sized vehicle and still get excellent horsepower out of it? Does that make sense at all?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, now, in order to help you understand the idea of making power, what I want you to think about is, and how an engine makes power, what I want you to think about on this is, suppose we had a stream of water, and we gave each one of you 4 girls a bucket, a water bucket, to go and get water out of the stream and pour it into the well. And what you're pouring into the well, we're going to call horsepower, okay? So if you guys each took your buckets, you went to the stream, got a bucket of water, poured it in, then went back and got another bucket of water, poured it in, we're making X amount of horsepower, right? Now, how could we increase the amount of power given that set of circumstances, which would mean we need to pour more water into that well, right? What?
Get a bigger bucket.
Bingo, exactly correct. That makes sense to you? I'm sorry?
Or more workers.
Okay, there's another thought, more workers. Anything else?
Well, have the workers move faster.
Okay, exactly correct, and that's exactly the way I want you to think about this. Now, this getting a bigger bucket is getting a bigger engine. That's the idea, getting a bigger engine. You want an engine with make more power. If we've got, say, a 283 Chevy engine, let's get a 327 or a 350, or for that matter, let's get a big block. Let's go all the way up to 454 cubic inches. That's getting a bigger bucket. Okay, fair enough. That's one way to do it. Problem is that has limitations too, because the bigger these buckets are, you need bigger arms and bigger muscles to carry them. In other words, you need it in a bigger engine. The engine itself has to be bigger. Understandable?
Yeah.
Okay, now who said about having the workers go faster?
I did.
Okay, that's the second part of the problem. How about same size buckets and we'll have you guys run back and forth faster to make more power. Is that fair enough?
You'll wear out faster though, won't you?
Well, yeah, you'll wear out faster. What else? For example, let's say we wanted you to make a lot. Let's say you're doing it at a fairly good clip going back and forth, and I say double your speed. And you can just barely do that, right?
Right.
Now I say triple your speed. Can you do it?
No.
Why not?
You're going to be exhausted, first of all.
How about if I say times 10 your speed?
You're gonna spill your water.
What?
You're gonna spill your water.
Okay, well the point is you physically can't do it. So you have limitations there. Well, the designers of engines are faced very much with the exact same problem. For example, if we start out with a 100 cubic inch engine, okay? 100 cubic inches. And it's making, and we'll say this would be cubic inches, okay? And it's making 100 horsepower, okay? In other words, 1 horsepower per cubic inch. Now, we are going to presume absolute efficiencies. Just for the purpose of this little explanation, we are going to presume that if we made this 200 cubic inches, we would make it 200 horsepower exactly. I'm sorry.
Real quick, in high school, I would have had to have a tutor for this. So do we have a tutor available if I need some help?
You may not have noticed, that's what I'm here for. In any event, because I don't look good in a costume, obviously, so that's what I'm here for. Now, 100 cubic inch engine making 100 horsepower. Now let's say that for whatever our reasons we need a 200 horsepower engine. Now using the things that we've just talked about, how can we get this thing to be a 200 horsepower engine? Kimmy?
200 cubic inches.
Okay, right. We could increase the size of this to 200 cubic inches, right?
Right.
And we could get 200 horsepower.
Right.
Fair enough?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What's another way we could do it given this set of circumstances we just talked about?
You can make it go faster.
Right, let's presume
Keep it
that
at 100 and make it go faster.
Right, let's presume that this 100 cubic inches making 100 horsepower, that it's doing it at 5,000 RPM, okay? That's the speed of you guys running back and forth with your buckets. It's doing it at 5,000 RPM, okay? Now, how could we make this engine make 200 horsepower without making it 200 cubic inches?
Raise the RPM.
To what?
6,000?
10,000.
10,000?
10,000.
Exactly correct. We want to double. We want to take the same thing and we'll run it at 10,000 RPM. All right, so we can get 200 horsepower. Now the advantage to that would be we've got the same size engine, externally the same size. We haven't added size and weight to the engine. We ended up with the same sized engine, but we're getting double the horsepower out of it, okay? Now how about if we need, let's say, 400 horsepower? And we're getting chased by bees, folks, that's why they're grimacing. How about if we want 400 horsepower? What do we have to do to the RPM then?
You have to times it by 4, yeah.
Well, we'd have to double it again.
Right.
We'd have to be up to 20,000 RPM, okay? Now, it would seem fairly simple, given this, if you think about this for a minute, that we wouldn't really need any different size engines. All engineers would really have to do in order to get, we could always have a 100 cubic inch engine, and let's say we had a semi-tractor trailer that was going to pull bulldozers across the country. How are we going to do that? Well, we'll run the engine at 50,000 RPM or 100,000 RPM to get the kind of horsepower necessary to do that and always have small light engines. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, why don't we do that?
I'm not sure.
Burn out the equipment.
The engine would be too big.
No, I'm saying 100 cubic inch engines, but we're going to make as much power as we need just by turning it faster and faster and faster.
You'll blow it up.
What blows up?
The engine itself.
No, you're on the right track. The point is, this isn't just a thing you can do nonchalantly. In order for an engine to go from a 5,000 RPM engine to a 10,000 RPM engine, requires a bunch of engineering changes. And the question that I want you guys to ask yourself is, what's the first reason we can't do it this way? Why do we have to have a wide variety of engines? What's the first thing we bump our head into going from 5,000 RPM to a 10,000 RPM engine? What's the first Achilles heel? What do we stumble across?
Trying to get the air-fuel mixture in?
No, the doors to the engine, the intake valves and the exhaust valves, getting these doors to open and close this many times faster is the first thing that we bump into. If you talk to any Winston Cup team, any top drag racing team, the valve train, getting the valve train to open and close more and more rapidly, let alone get up to 20,000 RPM, just going from 5 to 10,000, is the biggest challenge. And that's why when we get into things like overhead cams and double, and I want you guys to understand all this, but here is what we're trying to do. We're trying to take this engine that's 100 cubic inches, or any, doesn't make any difference, and we're trying to make, keeping that same size and weight, let's make more power to use for different applications. That's the idea, and what I'm going to explain next, in fact we're going to walk over there right now and do it, what I'm going to explain next is why we can't just keep increasing the power output of any engine just by going faster and faster and faster with it, like having you guys run back and forth harder and harder and harder with that bucket of water. Why it can't be done that way. Now, I think it probably best we better close the shot out here, and we will move over, and we've got a car all set up. The ABC people have been terrific. We've got a car set up. We're going to show you this. So, Kimmy, tell the camera.
Don't go away, folks. We'll be right back.
I think I'm getting the idea. There are physical limitations to making an engine go faster, and extending those limitations is what engineers work to accomplish. While I'm thinking about this, let's meet the girls that did the location work.
Hi, I'm Chris Schutz.
I'm Kim Donahue.
I'm Allison Demore.
And I'm Laura Stannis.
Thank you, girls. Now let's see what the engineers are up against when trying to make engines turn higher RPMs.
All right, girls, do you have any idea what you're looking at here, Christine?
The inside.
You're real knowledgeable. You've been with us through all the engine shows and everything. What are we looking at here?
That's the inside of the engine.
Okay, when we say the insides, what specific parts are we focusing on here?
Well, that's what you were calling the valve train.
The valve train, exactly right. Allison, valve train mean anything to you?
Yes, it's these boxes right here that hold the valves that make them go in and out. You can see them out there.
No, that's not what the valve train is. It's not at all. Okay, we need a little help for this. So you guys just stay put for a minute. Jim, come on in here and please bring Macon with you. We never leave the pretty girls out of the picture. Okay. Right over here. Don't run away from us. Go. First of all, you are
Megan Watson.
Okay, and who's this behind you?
My dad.
Okay, it's not a masher. I don't have to run him off?
No.
Okay. This is Jim Watson, and I should say Jim Watson Jr., right?
Yeah.
Okay.
You have to think there for a minute. Okay.
Anyhow, you guys have gone to a lot of trouble here to help us explain this to the audience, but as you know, we need somebody to kind of crank this thing over for us while I'm telling the girls what we're looking at. So if you would, can you jump in and
Absolutely.
be ready? And don't hit it until I tell you, okay?
No problem.
Okay. Now, girls, when we talk about the valve train, we are talking about the following components. First of all, down in here. Yes, Christine?
Would it be all right maybe for two of us girls to go on that side? Because we can't see what
Okay, you two guys go on that side, okay? Good suggestion, Christine. Underneath here is a component that's a shaft that has lobes on it, which are really eccentrics, which are really just like lumps, a shaft with lumps on it, and that shaft rotates, and it rotates in direct relationship to the camshaft, to the crankshaft. In other words, it has to turn at a specific time because these bumps, these lobes, they have to move the components that they have to move at a specific moment in the engine's life. It has to be timed correctly, okay? So you have a shaft in here that is rotating. These are lifters. The lifters are what the shaft lobes are pushing on. It pushes these lifters up. The lifters push the push rods. This is called a push rod overhead valve engine. Remember before I talked about OHV?
Yes.
This is an OHV, meaning overhead valve. It is the simplest of all the engines in current production. Flathead is even simpler, but I don't think there are maybe a Trabant or something in Russia, but we don't really have any flathead engines. So the overhead valve we would call the basic bread and butter production engine. This is an overhead valve pushrod engine, meaning the cam pushes the lifters push these push rods, the push rods push these rocker arms, and they're called rocker arms. Why, Kim? Because they do exactly as the name implies. They rock back and forth. The push rod pushes exactly. They go like that. The push rod pushes them this way, and they push the valve down here. And this on this side is the valve. All right, and the valve is what actually is the door to the cylinder. When the piston goes down and wants to inhale, the door has to open to let it inhale the air and fuel mixture through the port. Same when we want to get rid of the exhaust gases, the exhaust valve has to open in order so we can push the burned gases out again. So these are the doors to the engine. Now, if we've got the camera shot in there now, Jim, go ahead and crank the motor. I want you guys to see how these parts all work.
Oh yeah, you can see it right off the bat.
Okay, so you see as the cam goes around, pushes the lifter, pushes the push rod, pushes the rocker arm, and that's what opens it, and it opens it at exactly the right time. Okay, Jim, you can hold it.
So in an acceleration, the rockers would rock faster.
Yeah, exactly. The faster they are. Now, right now, the cranking speed there was about 200 revolutions per minute, about 200. Okay, so it's very, very slow. Yes, Christine?
I forgot. What did you call the long?
The push rods.
Okay, why are the push rods? They're not just going up and down. They're also turning.
That's exactly correct. An interesting observation. The reason they turn is for lubricating. Remember, if these things stayed in the same place all the time here and all the time down in their lifter, you would soon wear those spots out. So they're designed to turn, and remember, oil works its way up and down these push rods all the time, so that's what allows lubrication to get in. They're supposed to rotate. Do you get a basic idea of how these components work and open and close the doors?
That is the first thing that has made sense to me right now today.
Okay. Well, that's exactly why we're doing this show. So you can get an idea. Now, this is not an overhead cam engine. This is an overhead valve engine. Means the valves are over. In fact, they used to be called valve in head. Means the valves are in the head and they are over the cylinders. Okay, this is an overhead valve engine, but the cam is located down here, and it needs this valve train, meaning the lifters, the push rods, the rocker arms, all to open and close these valves. Now, as these things begin to go faster, when the engine RPM comes up, revs up higher and higher and higher, as they go up higher and higher and higher, these components actually begin to develop significant weight. Remember, that cam lobe has to push the lifter, the weight of the lifter, has to push the weight of the push rod, has to push the weight of the rocker arm, has to overcome the pressure of the spring, has to do all of those things, and then the spring has to do the opposite job. When the lobe goes past where it's supposed to bump it open, the spring has to close everything up again. The spring has to push the valve closed, it has to push the rocker arm closed, it has to push the push rod down, it has to push the lifter back down. As the RPM comes up and these things are going faster and faster and faster, that job gets harder and harder and harder. So when we talked before about making more power out of an engine by just revving it up higher, the first Achilles heel, the first thing we run into is this valve train cannot follow the cam lobes above certain RPMs. Now, can you think of something that we might be able to do just by looking at this to make it go to higher RPM? Let's say in a factory engine like this.
I have an idea.
Okay.
This probably cannot be done, but I'm going to say it anyway. Would there be a way to electronically make the spring move up and down?
Well,
to help instead of just having the rotation.
Okay, let's not get to that point because you're getting into something that's a little bit different, but how about if we just make stiffer springs?
Okay, so yeah, I'll make it.
That would help go to higher RPM. When you buy racing components for valve trains, when you buy racing components, part of the racing controllers is heavier and heavier springs, inner springs and outer springs, so you've got two springs underneath each one. And instead of, for example, this is a steel retainer above the valve that's holding the valve. Instead of being in steel, they've got aluminum ones, they have titanium ones to lighten the weight of that. Racing engines wouldn't have stamped steel rockers like this. They would have forged aluminum rockers to lighten the weight of those things.
All right, just now for verification. If the spring was thinner than this, it wouldn't get as many RPMs because it would be moving it faster.
Well, no, if the spring were lighter, it wouldn't have enough force to close all of these components. The weight of the
going real quick because of that. That's what I'm saying, though.
No,
the thicker, it takes a little more energy.
Takes more force to open it, but it has more force to close those.
Shuts it on its own.
Okay, following? Okay, so that's what you need to do, and you need to lighten all of these components. For example, the push rods, the popular racing push rods right now are carbon fiber, which is a composite to make very light push rods. So you need to lighten all of these valve train components and really stiffen the springs to get higher and higher RPM. From the factory, an engine like this is probably safe to about 5,000 RPM. By the time we get done modifying these things, well, I'll tell you what, let's talk about that in the other, we've got one where we can actually watch this thing run. Okay, so we're going to watch this run. I want you to see those components work. So, girls, tell the camera.
Don't go away, folks. We'll be right back.
Okay, that was OHV. We must be getting closer to OHC.
Actually, everything we've learned thus far does make sense, but I think it will be helpful to actually watch the valve train components while the engine is running.
What do you think? Is this making any sense at all to you?
A little bit, yeah. I can understand what the basic gist of the show is, and I understand what we're trying to, realize.
Okay, good. Maybe you can explain it to me because I'm hopelessly lost now.
Oh, okay. So I'm supposed to explain it now?
No, not really. I just want to, Are you getting an idea of what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, we're getting back to that thing of understanding why the engineers can't just, to get more and more power out of an engine, just keep running it faster and faster. Like you guys taking the bucket of water from the stream and pouring it down the well to make power, and you could either use bigger buckets or more buckets, which more cylinders would make the engine even larger, or run back and forth faster. The run back and forth faster is very appealing because you don't have to make the engine larger, and you can get as much power as you want, except there has to be a reason why you can't, and we talked about valve train components. Allison, is this discussion making sense at all?
So far up to this point, now we got to move on and see it do it.
Okay, we want to see it do it. Now what we're looking at here essentially, Kimmy, this is a different configuration engine, right?
Right.
What have we got here?
We have a 6-cylinder inline.
Okay, but essentially you can see that the components are all the same. We've still got the rocker. Let me step in front of it here so that you understand you're looking at the same thing. It's just a different configuration engine. Here's the rocker arms we talked about. There's the valve springs we talked about. Here's the push rods we talked about. And way down there, and I don't know if Chuck can see that in his camera shot, way down there we've got the lifters. So obviously underneath that, down into the depths of the block, we have the camshaft. Now everybody follow that, so the components are the same even though they're laid out differently, all right? And this again is called what kind of an engine, team? When we talk about OHV, OHC, what is this?
Overhead.
Overhead what?
Cam.
No, where's the cam?
What did you say? Overhead what?
This is an overhead valve engine.
Oh, I thought you said
OHV.
I thought you said OHC.
Well, I'm asking you, what is it?
Overhead valve.
Oh, okay, this is an overhead valve engine, meaning the valves are overhead, but the cam is down in the bottom of the block.
Right.
Right? Fair enough?
Right.
Okay, now, Jim Watson, can you help us here? Okay, what we're actually going to do now, and well, go ahead, we're going to go ahead and do this now. I want you guys to watch these components in operation. Go right ahead, Jim. Fire it up. Okay, might want to step back if there's a little bit of oil. Now, Allison, right now the engine is operating at about 500 RPM.
Okay, this is going much faster than the one was out there, so you could see the difference when the
Right, now this one is about 500 RPM. We were about 200 RPM before when we were just cranking it with the starter, okay?
Okay.
Now, guys, a little oil is probably going to flip off here. I want you to back up just a little bit, but I want you to watch all the components. Okay, Jim, go ahead and bring the RPM up more. Okay, that's enough. Go ahead and shut it down. Go ahead and shut it down. Now, what you were seeing there was only about 1,500 RPM, 2,000 at the most, Jim, would you say?
Oh, sure.
Say again? Oh, hold on, let me get over there by you. I can't, unless you're on mic, we can't hear you. What would you say?
I agreed with you, Bill.
Okay, about 1,500, 2,000 RPM at the most. Okay? Now, can you see that it becomes difficult for these components to follow that cam going up and down? Now, what would you say would be about the maximum that you could do? If he really revved this thing up, what would be about the maximum with what we've got here?
You mean as far as RPM?
Right.
4,000?
Probably more like about, I'm sorry? No, about 5,000. It's good for about, yeah, in standard condition we're talking about good for about 5,000. Now what would be the thing that would happen first so it wouldn't go up any higher? What would happen?
The valves would break?
No, what would happen is we get what we call valve float. The cam lobe, as it comes around to push the lifter up every time and push the push rod and push the rocker arm, as it goes up like that, it has to go up, and then as it goes past the lobe where it's opening, this valve spring has to push everything back and hold that lifter on the cam at all times. Well, what happens is that that spring can no longer force those components back, so it actually, as the cam lobe goes by, they stay in the air momentarily before they come by. That's called valve float. You do that excessively, and remember the piston is on the way up. You leave that valve open with the piston on the way up, you'll run the piston right into the valve, and it severely damage the engine. That's called...
That would happen rather quickly, though. I mean, your engine... I mean, once you've done that, damaged it, floated a valve, as you said.
You float the valves even momentarily, you got serious problems.
Right.
Now, on a very low performance engine like this, you might be able to get away with it once or twice because it's relatively low RPM and you don't have piston crowns that go up into the combustion chambers and all that. But it's a real bad thing to have happen. Now, in order to get this thing into racing form, I think I explained before when we were looking at it, to go with much stiffer springs, then all these components have to be made lighter. The rocker arms have to be made lighter, the push rods have to be made, but remember, you're making them lighter, you've also got to make them stronger at the same time because you've got much higher spring pressure to overcome. Remember, that cam has got to push that valve spring open every time, and the valve spring then pushes all the components back. So it's a real tough job to go to lighter components that are, in fact, stronger. What would you say, though, on a push rod, this is called a push rod overhead valve engine, what do you guys think would be about the maximum for that kind of a design? In any kind of for race motors or what have you. We've just been to Gertie engines. Those are all those late model Chevys, aluminum Chevys. Those things are all push rod 2-valve engines. What would you say is maximum that you could get under racing conditions for those?
Maybe 8,000 RPM?
Okay, it's a good guess. It's actually right on the money. Probably the most work done, other than obviously you've got the small block Chevys that Gertie has done a lot of work with, but one of the most successful overhead valve, two-valve designs is the Harley-Davidson XR750 dirt track engine. And that, again, is good for about 8,000. Doesn't mean you can't momentarily run it to 85 or something, and I've heard drag racers say they've already touched 10 grand with a Harley motor or touched 10 grand with, but you're doing it just momentarily, and it's real risky, and it's not efficient and all that, and it's something you wouldn't want to just hold it for there, because you were for sure going to float the valves and damage it. Now, if we want to get the motor then to run at 10,000 RPM, what do we do?
Real quick, Bill, what is like a race car? What would their RPMs be at this point?
Okay, now you're the trophy girl at Kankakee Speedway.
Right.
At Kankakee Speedway, all the top guys, the guys that run really fast, they're going to run those motors at about 8,000 RPM at full throttle.
Okay, if they could get it to 10,000, wouldn't they be doing that?
Yes, they would.
Okay, so in other words, it really can't be done at this point.
Right. Okay, now, but let's say we want an engine to run at 10,000.
Okay.
What do we do?
Wow.
We've done everything we can do. We've made the components lighter. We've used titanium. We've used carbon fiber. What can we do?
Maybe a type of fuel?
Now, how about another suggestion? I want you to take a look at these components now. Now we've got the cam down there, right? And the lifter, and the push rod, and the rocker arm, and it pushes open the valve, okay? How about if we eliminate all of those components? How about if we get rid of the lifters? Now, how about if we get rid of them? We get rid of the lifters and the push rods and the rocker arms. We get rid of all of those components. Would that be a good idea?
Yeah.
How could we do that, though? Help me.
See, to me, that doesn't seem feasible.
Why not? Use your imagination.
Well, I mean, it's fun to think of that, but it just doesn't seem like you'd have the equipment to make the two of them move. I mean, it would be...
Kimmy?
You
guys are real close to guessing. Think about it for me. What do we call this engine again? What three letters?
OHV.
What?
OHV.
Means overhead valve, right?
Right, overhead cam.
Ah, what does that mean?
Put the cam on top.
Wait a minute.
Oh. Put the cam on top.
Did you get it?
Yeah, put the cam on. I wasn't even thinking that. Wasn't even thinking.
That's imagination. That's right. Let's take the cam out of the block, put the cam up here on top of the valves, and have the lobes pushing right on the valves. Now what kind of operating range can we get?
Well, it would bring up your RPMs a lot, but can it be done?
We're going to find out. But do you fully understand what we've got here?
No, well, now that makes entire sense. I couldn't figure out. It just seemed like you need all the working pieces.
Well, but there's another way to do it. There's more than one way to skin a cat. And what we're talking about here is advanced technology and advanced design. And again, if you don't know what that OHC means on the side of the car, you're not likely to be willing to pay a few extra bucks to have an overhead cam design, unless you understand what you're trying to accomplish with it. We've got one other thing we want to show you, Jim, and these guys here. Again, I cannot thank these folks here at ABC enough. These guys, by the way, whether you know it or not, what we're doing here is we're sacrificing an engine. This engine will be ruined by the time we're done here in a few minutes. Am I right, Jim?
Oh, absolutely, if it's not already.
If it's not already. And what are we going to do now?
We're going to blow it up.
Well, no, we're not going to blow it up. But no. We're not going to blow it up. What we're going to do is I want you guys to see what's going on inside of an engine when the engine is actually running. And I'm talking about the crankshaft and the connecting rods and all that. And these guys have taken the oil pan off of this engine. It means we're running this engine right now without oil. So we are destroying the engine, but this is an educational effort. We want our audience to see what's going on inside of an engine.
We already did that.
Wait a minute, Christine, you're not on the mic. Say it again.
As long as we've already done what we've done so far, we might as well,
Well, we might as well go the rest of the way. Now, I want you two guys to tell the camera.
Don't go away, folks. We'll be right back.
I get it. OHC means overhead cam.
Watching the valve train in action was very helpful in understanding the advantages of overhead cam designs. Before we look at it though, Bill couldn't resist the opportunity to show you what the backbone of the engine, the crankshaft, looks like when it's running. This really is interesting. Watch.
Okay, girls, we're looking at the bottom of the engine, and this that I have in my hand is an oil pan. Not for this engine specifically, but this is just an oil pan in general. And one of the things I want you guys to see real quick is the importance of making sure that you never run low on oil. As you can see on an oil pan, it's just a basin. That's all it is, and I hope our camera can see that. And if you notice on that end, you see what you've got there, Kim? You see that plug? Right there, that's a drain plug, and when you have the oil changed, all they do is take that drain plug out, let the oil drain out, put the plug back in, and fill it up with oil again. That's how it's done.
When you pour in the oil, this is where it all goes to.
This is exactly where it all goes to, is in the basin at the bottom of the engine. This is called a wet sump engine, meaning that all of the oil, and that's how all the production engines are wet sump engines, okay? Now I'm going to put this down. The other thing I want to point out to you right here is if you guys can bend down just a little bit. I know our camera can't see this, but you see this thing right here? You see what the words that it says on it right there? Can you guys see that at all?
Can't see any words.
It says, what? Yeah, exactly, and that's the dipstick. So what you're seeing is the dipstick, and all a dipstick is just a piece of metal that literally goes in here like this, so that when you fill the oil up in here and it's got enough oil to register on a dipstick, that's all the dipstick is doing. It sticks in the oil pump. Okay. The reason this is so critical is this particular device right here, and I don't know if our camera can see this at all, but this is the oil pickup. And what this is when the engine starts and runs, it has an oil pump, and part of the process, it is continually going it is inhaling oil. This has to be immersed in oil all the time because it lubricates every part in the engine. Everything is lubricated from the oil. And if even momentarily this is not in oil, it sucks air into the oil system, and then you get metal-to-metal contact, and you can literally ruin an engine in a few minutes. And that's what we're doing today. These guys have sacrificed this engine so you guys can see what happens in an engine when it runs. What we're looking at up here, again, if we've got this shot and I'm getting oil on me, is the crankshaft all across here with the connecting rods connected to it, and we are going to start it up and run this thing so you can see what that looks like. And I don't want you guys to get any oil on you, so if you would step around to the front where you were before. Jim Watson, are you ready up there? All ready. Okay, go ahead and start it up.
So that's what's going on inside of an engine when it's running. Now, before we forget what we've learned about valve trains, let's look at some advanced designs.
All right, girls, you seem to be grasping the situation of how to make the engines run faster and faster to get more and more power out of smaller and smaller engines. Is everybody getting the idea of that?
Yes.
Okay, this would be the next step. Remember, Allison and I said in here, if we can get rid of all of those components that we were talking about? Right. Now, this is what's known as a single overhead cam engine. Now, do you know what that means now?
Well, there's only one set of...
One cam. And what will we not have in here when I open this up?
The rods and
push rods
and the little valve.
with names.
The lifters.
Right.
Okay, and the rocker arms.
Right.
Okay, well, let's take a look at it and see. Let's take this cover off.
Okay.
Now, what do you see?
Well, it's the same kind of general function, but there is all those less parts, so it'll move from this way.
Right, but if you notice on this particular design, you still do have something of a rocker arm. This arm here is pushing. You see how it's on it's on a lifter here, and it pushes the spring over here. So the cam doesn't really push right on the valve. It actually pushes on this little arm, and that's done. And all those other components are gone.
Right.
So we've lightened them considerably. Now, on an engine's designs like this, and I don't want to get overly complicated, but I'm going to give you generalities. Honda came out with their 754 cylinder engine, I believe, I'm going to say 1969, something like that. That engine immediately was redlined about 9,000 RPM, whereas all the overhead valve engines before that were redlined about 5,000 or 6,000 RPM. They all of a sudden, with a production engine, comes out with 9,000 RPM redline. Single overhead camshaft made it possible that this thing could very comfortably, without excessive valve spring pressures, could very comfortably follow the cam lobes as the cam is turning around. Single overhead cam, very good design. Still not, you were asked what the ultimate was, right?
Right.
Okay. This isn't it, but this is a big improvement. So when you see a car that has the OHC overhead cam, that's an improvement over the overhead valve.
And that's this.
And that's this. The cam is overhead instead of being down with all of the stuff, the valve train. Okay, follow that?
Yes.
Yes, Chris?
Does that have 2-bolt main bearings?
We don't know without pulling the pan off and turning this thing upside down. So I don't even know what kind of an engine it is, okay? Now, I want to call your attention to the engine right next to you there. This one, give me an idea. In fact, girls, if you can, go ahead and move right on down. This one, what are we looking at here? Christine, obviously it's a Porsche engine because it says Porsche, but why am I bringing you over here? What's the configuration of this and the number of cylinders?
Well, I think it's a 8-cylinder V.
Right, this is a V8, this is an 8-cylinder V8, but if you remember when we saw that other engine you were looking at where we were turning it over with the key and you could see everything moving, if you notice, there's no camshaft in here in the center of the V, okay?
Not in here, is it?
No, this is the fuel injection. This is a all-aluminum Porsche V8 engine. This is the fuel injection for it. But the interesting thing about this is if you'll notice, right up here at the front, you see the wheel here, and there's one over at that front. This is a single overhead camshaft on a V8 engine. Now, interestingly enough, even though this engine has 2 camshafts, one for each bank, it's called a single overhead cam design because it refers to number of cams per bank of cylinders. So this is a single overhead cam design even though it has 2 cams, one for each bank of cylinders. Very similar to this design. If we laid this on its side or on a V angle and put another one next to it, that would be a V8, okay?
This one would have more power because it's working on 2 singles versus just the one.
No, the design would be the same. This one would have a lot more power because it's a much larger engine and all that sort of thing, but it's still a single overhead cam design, a very, very good design, but still not the ultimate. Now I want you to move down here and take a look at this design. What was the thing, Alice, when we were looking at the motorcycle over there? What was the lettering on there that you said?
What was it? Double overhead cam.
Right. This is a double overhead cam design. Yeah. That's exactly correct. Now, if we take these covers off, we see 2 cams. Now, if you will notice, there is no rocker arm in there. The cam lobes, these are the lobes. These are the lobes. You see how as they go around, it'll take and push that? It pushes directly on the valves.
There's no springs. There's no valve springs.
Oh, no, the valve springs are all inside there where you can't see. It has.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but what it does, it doesn't have the weight of the rocker arms, it doesn't have the push rods, it doesn't have the lifters, then it pushes directly. Now these engines, and again, I won't quote, this is a Jensen Healy engine.
Is this all to increase the RPMs or the horsepower of the engine?
Exactly correct. It gives you, now to give you an idea, later on the Honda motorcycles, they went from single overhead cam designs, and not just Honda, but Kawasaki, Suzuki, all modern high-tech designs. All of them have all gone to these double overhead cams, lobes pushing directly down on the valves. These engines now, today, are up to 15 and 16,000 RPMs. Not this particular engine, but I'm talking about some of the latest high-tech Japanese double overhead cam engines. And even the most minor ones can easily be revved to 12,000 RPM.
This doesn't have rockers at all, then these actually make the spring go up and down.
Exactly, it pushes directly on the valve itself, and it just as a point of interest, the way you would adjust the clearance then, because well, I don't know, because we haven't even talked about that, but you'd have to change these shims that are underneath the valves because there is no linkage or anything to adjust. The cam lobe pushes directly onto the valve, and all the valve spring has to do is return the weight of the valve.
That seems like that would. I mean, it just sounds like it would make it so much more power.
It is better, but again, if the public doesn't know it, when they see that DOHC on the side of a car or OHC, they have no idea whether it's worth any more, and you would probably maybe pick the overhead valve if it had a jazzier looking logo, right?
Well, yeah.
I mean, before, no, that's my point. So we want right.
I wish I would have known this a couple months ago.
Okay, we're getting a holler over here where we've got 1 minute left, and I want to show you one more thing. Allison, you were asking what the ultimate is before. Step right over here. Girls, couple on this side, quickly. This one is an example of the ultimate, and I don't know, Chuck, can we get a decent camera shot of this? And hold the microphone for me, please. Hold it right to me, okay? Now, what we've got here, I'm going to tip this thing up and pull the cover off. This one happens to be a Suzuki engine. Okay, this is a car engine, though, by the way. And if you will notice that we've got double overhead cams, one on each side. This is a Hemi design, so the valves come from this side and this side. The cam lobes push directly down on the valve, so we don't have all that monkey motion and all that. And if you tip this one up so we can see inside of the combustion chambers, you will notice, and Chuck, do we have a shot of this now? Okay, we've got it. 4 valves per cylinder, you're exactly right. So this is the latest thinking and the latest stuff for production engines. There are 5 valve engines now, but it's not real production engine other than motorcycles. Okay, we got to wrap it up. They're telling me I got to get out of here. Guys, what do you think? Is this understandable at all? Yeah. Okay, hey, everybody have fun here today. Is it nice to spend an afternoon in the junkyard? You guys all enjoy it? Okay, together?
Don't go away, folks. We'll be right back.
I do understand. From now on, I want DOHC.
As always, we're running late and have to close the show.
It was a fascinating day, though. Paul Schultz, can you put a bow on this package?
I sure can, ladies. Let's acknowledge the fine work of our award-winning Motorsports Unlimited production team, including Chuck ITZENTHALER, John Papke, Mike Sabatino, Gail Joyce, Winnie Allen, Kevin Wendorf, and Bill Moore. And of course, a special thank you to the stars of today's show, Laura Stannis, Kim Donahue, Allison DeMore, and Chris Schutz. Talk about stars. How about the folks that make music for Motorsports Unlimited, including Fireside Recording Studio in Westchester, Illinois, and independent musical artists Roger Pauley and Jerry Herbert. Thanks to JBTV's Jerry Bryant for the video artistry. Me, I'm Paul Schultz, reminding you to be kind to the kid in your neighborhood that always works on his car. He may be the person that develops the 100-mile-per-gallon engine that doesn't pollute the environment.
We're going up, we're going down, we're going on down, downtown, anywhere you want to roll. Yeah.
Let's take a moment to acknowledge those who helped update this episode of Motorsports Unlimited. Tom McGrady, Rena Borowitz, Sue Casanda, Samantha Bentley, May Chin, Patty Borowitz, and me, I'm Janine Lauschat. By the way, don't forget, May 5th, 2007, it's the Bridgeview Sports Dome Car Show. And the following day, May 6th, it's the J.C. Whitney Show. Get your vehicles ready.
This program made possible in part by support from Copy That, located in the County Farm Plaza at County Farm Road and Army Trail Road in Carroll Stream, Illinois. This program made possible in part by support from PB Food Products, located on 47th Street at Western Avenue in Chicago, Illinois.
This program made possible in part by support from J.C. Whitney & Company, located just off I-80 at the Utica exit in LaSalle, Illinois.
Motorsports Unlimited is produced by Bill Wildt, president of the Motorsport Advancement Crusade.
This program made possible in part by support from Jimmy's Red Hots, located on Grant Avenue and Pulaski Road in Chicago.
This program made possible in part by support from the Chicagoland Toys for Tots Motorcycle Parade, held on Western Avenue in Chicago, the first Sunday in December.
This program made possible in part by support from ABC Auto Parts, located on Ashland Avenue at 138th Street in Blue Island, Illinois.
This program made possible in part by support from Bridgestone Firestone and your local Bridgestone Firestone tire retailers.
Motorsports Unlimited was created to raise public consciousness, understanding, and appreciation of the motorsport community and their activities. You can contact us by email at msutv.com, or you can write to Motorsport, P.O. Box 66242, Chicago, Illinois, 60666. We enjoy hearing from our audience. Please let us know what you think.
Next week on Motorsports Unlimited, it's your final reminder about the upcoming Dome Show in Bridgeville, Illinois. On May 5th, 2007, the Dome Show starts the season, rain or shine, or even snow, because the weather is always perfect inside the Dome, and we're going to prove it to you by showing you the first one that was held despite rain. All next week on Motorsports Unlimited.
So that's it, another edition of Motorsports Unlimited and the lovely ladies of motorsports. And be with us next week because we'll have something real exciting. Bill Wildt's going to have the lovely ladies, and just about anything can happen right here on Motorsports Unlimited. Every week at this time, we bring you the best in motorsports. So be seeing ya. Bye-bye. And keep on rocking.